Okay, I think we have it going.
Yes? No? Yes. Maybe?
We're good.
We're good? Yes. Cool. All right. Cool. Can everyone hear me in the back there? Thumbs up? Yes? So I don't have to worry about a microphone. I like to walk around, so I could use the microphone, but this seems like a small enough room, and I am loud enough that I don't necessarily need to. So welcome to Kickstarting. Are you good? We're good?
We're good.
Okay. Welcome to Kickstarting Application Security Program. My name is Timothy D. Block, and this is not picking up. Why is it not picking up? Now I have problems. Oh, I bet you know why. There we go. All right, cool. So why this talk? Well, I don't have a strong programming background. And when I started building an application security program, I didn't have a strong AppSec programming background. So I kind of had to start from scratch, from literally zero to get a program off the ground. And I want to put this talk together to kind of help people who are in similar situations or looking for ideas how to get involved in the development lifecycle a little bit more. We're hearing, a lot of people saying we got to get in the software development lifecycle for a lot of this stuff. Just look at IoT. So this talk is meant to do that, to address that and kind of help people. What I do have experience in is building other programs. So I've built incident response programs, patch management, and those were very successful, and both my AppSec programs have been successful as well. What I'm finding is that other people are already doing this stuff, and so this talk has given them a little bit of confidence. And for people in the consulting realm, that are looking to engage with the development team a little bit more, I've talked to a couple people who have found benefit in this talk. So that's why this talk is. So the roadmap is understanding the environment, security assessments, inventorying, and then there's two others there, feedback, review, and improvements. This is a 30-minute talk. It is originally a 50-minute talk. I just embellish a little bit, but I don't have time to really go into that stuff, and the title is Kickstarting. So this is just getting a program off the ground. So my first journey started with, we need an AppSec program. And I'm mentioning this here because one of the first things that you need in building an AppSec program is leadership and management support. If you don't have that, you're probably dead in the water. It's going to be very difficult to get anything started and anything done. I have had to lean on management sometimes to make sure that the development that when new applications are coming through, that they're going through security. So my first journey started in Columbia, South Carolina. The advantage I have is that it's a known environment. I'd been there for a year and a half. The disadvantage I had is that I was wearing multiple hats. This is also a waterfall. So from a security perspective, waterfall is several months and has very defined steps throughout the process. So getting security in there is a little bit easier than some of the other methodologies. So what I did was I started by researching. I used everyone's favorite IT tool, Google. And I literally put in how to build an AppSec program in there. Again, I'm starting from zero, don't know anything, don't know where to go. Google's my guiding point. But as you'll notice there, the first three results are from something called OWASP, which is the Open Web Application Security Project. This is a massive, nonprofit, open source organization just focused on application security. You're going to get a lot of value out of this. It has knowledge base, it has frameworks, and it also has tools. And this is where I started with, was a dynamic analyzer called ZAP, Z Attack Proxy. And what we did was we set this up as new applications and new features were going out. We were doing dynamic analysis on the new stuff. And this dynamic analyst is where you can proxy all your traffic from your computer to the application and interact with it in its live form. Some of my longer talks, I do go into a little bit more of the methodology, but what is great about these tools is it's very well documented. You can go to YouTube, you can go, read just the documentation itself and really get started with it. The alternative to ZAP Proxy is Burp Suite. That is the preferred application, or the preferred dynamic analyzer for application security professionals. It is $300 a year for the pro version. There is a free version. The only difference between free and the paid version is that it's throttled a little bit. So, that's dynamic analyzers. Another tool is static analyzers. Static analyzers allow you to scan code in its rawest form. So you get some really good code coverage. The downside to that is there's a lot of false positives. You've got two options there. You got your open source, which typically focuses on one language. You've also got some commercial options, and there's more than just what's up on the board there for each one of those. There is a ton of static analyzers out there. The commercial versions will usually cover multiple languages. So if you can afford it, commercial isn't a bad way to go. Again, OWASP has a page that kind of talks about what static analyzers are and some of the options that can be utilized. So, vulnerability tracking. And this is where I ran into my first problem. We had set up applications, any new applications and features going out to be scanned. And what ended up happening is you have the criticals and the highs addressed, the medium and lows, depending on factors. You could potentially let it slide and have it addressed later on and still let the release go through. We would get timelines for that stuff. We would come back a month after those timelines because we didn't think about it. We're tracking this by email or spreadsheet or what have you. And we realized that it wasn't addressed. So that was kind of we need something to really start tracking all the findings that we're having. Internal options are great. If you can use what the development team is using, that's probably where you should be, because ultimately security findings are bugs. So they should be addressed and prioritized in the same way. If you're looking for some security tools, this is where I started with Dradis. I didn't have much success with this. It wasn't very well documented, and we just had problems getting it installed on a server that we wanted to run it from. This is in a lot of like Metasploit framework and Samurai web testing framework. I have heard other people have success with this, and they really love the tool. We moved on to ThreadFix, and ThreadFix had a free community version that has since, confirmed by a couple people, they've stopped supporting the free version. So this is pretty much turned into like a paid product. I haven't used it since they've gone paid, but it essentially allowed us to import the XML files that were generated by the Zap tool to kind of start tracking and checking and getting some metrics on security vulnerabilities. More recently, I have found OS Defect Dojo. And I had Greg Anderson on my podcast, Exploring Information Security, to talk about the tool. And it sounds like a fantastic tool. It will accept vulnerability reports from multiple tools, and then what it does is it will dedupe those down to one security finding if there's multiple across tools. So that sounds like fantastic in itself. It's got integration with Jira, so if you want to automate ticket creation, you can do that. It's also really easy to install. It's like one line of code, and it's got some metrics. If you go to the OWASP page there, you can click on the link and kind of go through a demo version of it, so you can kind of poke around in there. You'll see other people have been in there poking around. So let's talk about handling vulnerabilities. And this is probably one of the most important things. So you're pounding away, finding all the vulnerabilities. You're generating reports. What are you supposed to do next? Well, make sure you confirm your findings. Do not take the developer's false positives. If you take them false positives, it's going to be very difficult to work with them in the future. You can have 9 security findings, and if you have 1 false positive, they're going to lose trust in you. So you really want to work with the developers to find a solution. And if you're like me, where I had a detriment in application security and programming, I had to ask them a lot of questions. They are very much open to questions. Just don't take them a report and walk away. If you're doing that, it's going to be very difficult to get things taken care of. If nothing else, demonstrate the vulnerability. I've found several times where I just showed them the cross-site scripting or the SQL injection. They thought it was cool, and then they ran off to go figure out what they needed to do to get it fixed. And if you both don't know how to fix it, you need to hop on Google and try to start researching how to help them to fix it. A lot of times, though, in my experience, the developers already know how to fix it. They know what's wrong with it, or the best case scenario is, oh, that's old code, we can just delete it. So you work with them to really address these vulnerabilities. So training, and something interesting happened when I started showing them the power of the dynamic analyzer. They wanted to start learning the tool. They wanted to start using it. Zap is free, so they can just go download it and start playing with it, which is what I had them do. I started having one-on-one and group training with them to show them how to use the tool. Because if they're going to go use that tool before they bring it to the security team, that's just going to make everything smoother and make the process move along a lot better. And something interesting happened. We had reports of a security incident where a phishing email was being generated by our application. So someone would register, and then they would get a phishing email at the end of registration. That doesn't sound good. So we got together, we made a plan of action. The development team was going to go create a user, see if a phishing email is actually generated. I was going to go research the phishing email and see if we were seeing it anywhere else. And then after that, I was going to go back to the registration process with the dynamic analyzer and test it. While we're looking at it, we might as well go ahead and take a look to see if there are like a cross-site scripting vulnerability or something else that might need to be addressed. So we go away, everyone gets back together, developers say no phishing email, and here's a Zap report. This was kind of my response. This is what we want. We want the developers using this tool. And this is kind of where I had an epiphany, in that we want to improve the security mindset of the development team. There's this concept of, setting up an application security assessment and then working left of the process. So you want to get into design and code review, QA, just wherever you can get. Well, the furthest left of the development lifecycle is the mindset of the developer. If they're already thinking about security, then, they're hopefully coding it in a secure way. You can also think of this as a defense in depth strategy, where you have certain checks throughout the process. If they're kind of getting it at the first check, which is their mine, that's going to save everyone a lot of time and money. So that was kind of my first journey. My next journey was a little bit different. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to accept the role. As I was sitting with the dev team to build an application security program for them. That was going to be my sole role. So that's my advantage. My disadvantage is I have to learn the environment. So my first step is to understand the environment and building an application security program. The first journey I was able to skip that because I'd been there for a year and a half. It usually takes me 3 months to start getting a gist of an environment. 6 months I start to feel comfortable. 1 to 2 years I feel really confident in it and knowing where to go. And one thing about these is that they're not really steps. They're more guidelines, phases. They can kind of all merge. You will still be doing understanding the environment while you move on. I had my first security finding and first process established within the first 2 months of being there. So these aren't really like you do this and then this and this. They can all kind of merge together. So my first step is to build a relationship. And I build a relationship because security can be very intimidating. And so I want to humanize and get to know the developers, understand, get to know them as a person and kind of humanize security as well. And they respond a lot better. And this is so that you can have the harder conversations, because security, we're just going to be bringing a lot of bad news most of the time. So having a good relationship with the developers is really, really important. If you can sit with the development team, great. If not, you're going to kind of have to figure out how you can do that. Because I've seen it where, our security team, the personnel there, have a different interaction with the developers than I have who I'm sitting with. And sometimes there can be a little frustration there in the communication lines. If you're looking for an area to start, business analysts, scrum masters are typically the area POs, product owners, are typically the good areas to start because they have their hands in a lot of the different areas of the development lifecycle, which is where security is going to be at as well. This picture is from Johnny Christmas's talk in BSides Nashville 2015 about how to meet people at conferences. A lot of those same concepts can be applied to interacting with the development team. They tend to like a lot of the same things that we do. The other thing is I attend meetings. I try to get into dailies, weeklies, whatever meeting I can. And this is solely for the purpose of observing and watching. I don't say a lot. I want to understand their goals, their challenges, their frustrations, and, their security acumen. Because security is so much in the news now, the developers are becoming more aware of what's going on. I mean, how can they not with the constant breaches and constant vulnerability of vulnerabilities being found in software? So I go in there, and I have seen where developers will start going down the wrong path from security perspective. I haven't said anything, and it's amazing to see them self-correct. They know you're in the room. If they know your role, they know you're in the room, they will start taking security they'll start being more aware of that. And, that's great. That's what we want. We want to be speaking, we don't want to be speaking up as much, because again, we're bringing a lot of negativity to their process and a lot more work. So if they can fix a lot of that stuff themselves, that's great. And sometimes I've seen developers spit out like a whole thing on security and then right at the end go, but I'm not a security person. That we want to start building their confidence in security, because a lot of them are doing it pretty well. And if you have to speak up, do it in the form of a question. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Why are we doing it this way? Try to understand it versus saying, no, we can't do it this way. I mean, there might be certain scenarios where that is, but try to do it in the form of a question and kind of start guiding them that way. They respond a lot better to that kind of stuff. The other thing is to inventory everything. I'm sure many of you can look up here and see that there's been some kind of security incident, I think even within since the beginning of this year. Or there's even with the Amazon Web Services stuff 2 weeks ago, or within a relative short period of time. This isn't unlike computer and network asset management within IT. We need to have an understanding of what's in the environment, and this is only logos from about a fifth of another graphic that someone had of all the technologies that could be used in the development life cycle. This is just scratching the surface on this stuff. And you need to have an understanding of what's in your environment so that if a big vulnerability can be hit, you can go check to see if there's an issue. Apache Struts just came out last week. The issue with that there. So having a good understanding of what's in there is they're also going to be looking to you to understand how to do best practice security with a lot of this stuff. Again, you might have to go to Google or go to some other resources to figure out how to secure these applications. And this will take a lot of time. I am still doing this. I started this 6 months ago, and I am still doing this. So now we get to the fun stuff where we establish assessments and processes. And we want to start with all new applications and features. And the reason why we start with all new applications and features is because if you start with the old stuff, you're just going to be constantly playing catch up. You're going to be looking at stuff and addressing things that they aren't working on right now. So you want to start at what they're working on right now. And when you have an opportunity to go back to stuff already in production, you do that. This is also an opportune time to do automation within the development life cycle. So there's a project called OWASP Pipeline, which deals with continuous integration and continuous development. The next step is also you want to implement processes that make sense. A lot of my processes have been implemented because the developers have asked a question. How do we handle this? How are we supposed to be doing this? One of the first ones I set up was a third-party assessment of vendors. Again, you need to have an understanding of what's being in your environment, who you're interacting with. And some of the time before I got there, development would make a decision on something and then go ahead with that, and the security's going, whoa, you didn't tell us anything about it. Security's got to vet a lot of this stuff. You got to go through compliance. You got to get all the legal documents signed for, third-party stuff, especially if you're dealing with sensitive information. So there was a process where I gave them a checklist and, to run through of what might ding them or get the vendor, disqualified by a security assessment. The other one, and I set these up in within the first 2 months. The other one is security tickets. So when we have a security finding, how do we address that within the development life cycle? And so we set up a process for me to create a bug ticket and then send it off to the right people for them to be addressed and prioritized. And I'm also there as a resource with that stuff. So training, and I'm doing it again because I feel like training is very important. I'm focusing a lot on building relationships, getting to understand the developers. because you can create a lot of havoc otherwise. And so I've kind of advanced my training ideas from my first journey. And I brought bacon. That is a picture of 144 pieces of bacon for training, for security training for the development team. That is 272 pack of pre-cooked bacon. And it was $20 of my own money. I couldn't get the company to help me with it. They gave me some swag, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I did that and dropped it on the table, and the look on the developer's face when they walked into security training was amazing. Is that bacon? It is, so we want to make bacon. We want to make training interesting. We don't want to do death by PowerPoint slide. We don't want to do death by bullet points. So a lot of this, my presentation here, I use a lot of the same things when I'm doing security training. We like to have fun. We watch YouTube videos. This allowed me to segue into piggybacking. And then we watched YouTube videos on a guy trying to get through a man trap with a server, which was hilarious because it took him like 5 minutes to do it. So look for opportunities to make training interesting. Doesn't have to be, they get a lot of the security awareness, which is a lot of compliance stuff already. So you kind of want to be more interactive with them during the training. And I brought swag to highlight security wins. Again, in security, we're going to bring a lot of bad news and a lot of things they're doing wrong. So we want to highlight security wins, big or small. Look for opportunities. Are they using a tool in their development lifecycle that has a security aspect of it? I would highlight that and say, yeah, that's awesome. Or did someone find something in code? Or, I had a developer who's using a YubiKey. That's awesome. I want him to use a 32-character password for his network password. I think that's great. And we want to highlight these wins because we're going to have hard conversations with them. Things about, internal issues. Boring processes, lessons learned from a security incident. You're going to have a lot of hard conversations with these people. They respond a lot better if you're a positive influence among them and that you're highlighting a lot of the good things that they're doing so they don't feel so bad. If you only focus on the bad, it's going to be really hard to get them to respond. The other thing I like to put in there is highlight current trends. Who's heard of MongoDB and the issue there? Got a couple hands and laughing. I had a room full of developers who none. It was blank faces. So we had a great conversation around ransomware, misconfiguration. I pulled up Shodan and showed them the power of Shodan, and they were absolutely amazed by that. We can also talk about strategies where, yes, they've hit MongoDB, but now they're moving on to Elasticsearch and CouchDB. Cloud Pets has recently hit the news as something. And I actually had a privacy talk one-on-one with one of the developers about privacy. So he was taking privacy really seriously, and so we had a good conversation around that kind of stuff. So this is also meant to highlight why security is important, why we're doing what we're doing. So that's pretty much it. Achievement unlocked. You've stood up an AppSec program. Now this is, so what's next? And this is again where I'm going to have a future talk, hopefully. Feedback and review. You want to understand. You want to make sure that what you're doing is effective and actually fits. If there's an issue or they don't like something, you should probably adjust. And look for opportunities to make improvements as well. You can also improve your skills. If you're like me and didn't have a strong programming background, get on these sites. There are tons of free programming resources out there. There's one not up here that I haven't had a chance to add yet, which is Code Fights. Code Fights is a puzzle-based, meet a certain criteria to beat a challenge for coding. I love Code Academy because they've got a terminal that I have to code properly before I move on to the next step. And you kind of build out an application over 9 or 10 steps. Pluralsight is another favorite of mine. It does, it's got a lot of video training on there. That's anywhere from an hour to 9 hours. So there's a lot of great stuff on there. And it's also a great resource if you have to research something. Follow people within the application security field. Or if you can get training, do that. SANS 542 was a course that really made application security click for me. I really started feel more confident within application security. Troy Hunt is one of my favorite bloggers. He blogs. He's been recently started doing a video blog. He also does a lot of Pluralsight courses. The Web Application Hacker's Handbook is considered the Bible of application security. If you're looking to get better at Burp Suite, that's a good one to go through as well, because it has Burp Suite screenshots in there. There are a ton of people. This is only just a small sample of all the people in application security to follow. So final thought here. I've kind of focused on people skills a little bit in this and not as much technical, but that's what I've found is that a lot of the developers already know how to do a lot of that stuff. What they don't want you to come in and do is tell them their code sucks. And as I was going through the interview process, that was a criteria. They didn't want to bring in someone that was going to say their code sucked. It was it's a relationship. I'm considered, my role was designed as a liaison. So I have to have a lot of people-person skills and soft skills to interact with them, and very tactful when I'm bringing security issues to the forefront. So my final point is, I've stuck by the motto of putting developers in a position to succeed. And if I do that, that kind of helps me with getting them to take security more seriously. So that's pretty much it. I run a podcast exploring information security. There's my contact information if you need to contact me or have questions. My place of employment is looking for a senior Splunk admin if anyone's in Splunk and wants to move to Nashville. And we're also hiring for a June pen tester role. So that's pretty much it. Good on time?